I want to share with you a Passover text that I love. It was written by the Sfat Emet Yehuda Leib Alter of Ger, who lived in 19th century Poland. He wrote that on every Pesach, a Jew becomes like a new person. Like the newborn child each of us was as we came forth from Egypt. There's a point implanted by God within our hearts that is renewed. That point is called lechem oni, poor people's bread, or the bread of affliction, because it is totally without expansion. Matzah is just the dough itself, not having changed through fermentation. We each have this inner place, the gift of God. Our task is really to expand that point, to draw all our deeds to follow it. This is our job throughout the year, for better or worse, but this holiday of Matzot is the time when the point itself is renewed, purified from any defilement. Sfat Emet is teaching that each of us has an inner essence that we have expanded away from over the course of the year. We have become fluffed and filled with air. We pay attention to unimportant things and focus instead on fleeting small things. On Passover, we should be like matzah, reconnect with that which is essentially who we are, and if we do that, then after Passover, we can expand from that point and make sure all our actions are aligned with who we are and who we want to be. This week's Torah portion is in part a cautionary tale about becoming too puffed up and arrogant. It begins with the 8th day, a grand celebration. After weeks of painstaking detail about the dimensions of the tabernacle and the materials to be used, the design of the priest's dress, we come to Shmini, the 8th day. Finally, the beginning of the sacrificial system. The mood is festive. The crafting of a system for communicating with God is complete. In the midst of that celebration, as Rabbi Paris explained, 2 of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Abihu, take their fire pans and vayakrivu lifnei Adonai eish zara asher lo tziva otam. Bring near to God alien fire that was not commanded them. And fire came forth from God and consumed them. They died before God. Moses said to Aaron, "This is what Adonai meant by saying, 'Through those near to me I show myself holy and gain glory before all the people.'" And Aaron was silent. There are many interpretations of what Nadav and Abihu did wrong. Some commentators say that they were drunk. Others say that they were naked or that they did not properly wash. And there are lots of other reasons given. But the text seems plain enough that they acted with arrogance. They were puffed up and reckless. They did not pay attention to the detail that had been so painstakingly described. Some liken them to being careless with a nuclear reactor. And they died. And Aaron, their father, could only be silent. Nearly unavoidably, there are times in our lives when we all have been arrogant. And for those of us who are parents, times when we see that despite our best wishes, our kids act with recklessness and arrogance. Some of that is just part of growing up. We hope that we live to learn from our mistakes. Aaron's loss seems unimaginable and unfair. As I've been thinking about this portion, a scene from a film whose name I can't find keeps coming back to me. There's a scene where these teenagers are hanging out, and there's a disagreement that evolves into pushing and shoving. And in the camera's eye, but unnoticed by the teenagers, is a saw that is pointing out towards the teenagers with a sharp point. And the audience, or at least I, am frightened on behalf of the kids. How will it change all of their lives if one of them is pushed into that saw? The shenanigans end, and no one is hurt, and they leave the space and they go on with their lives. In the movie scene, and we hope in our lives, many people do live to learn from their moments of arrogant, youthful foolishness. We pray that our children will. At the same time, unfathomably, if we assume that the universe is fair, some people who act righteously suffer undeservedly. This week, 7 people who gave of themselves to deliver food to those in need were wiped off the face of the earth because of another country's mistake. Not just any country, our beloved Israel. We mourn the lives of World Central Kitchen workers Saifeddin Issam Ayad Abu Taha, Laizami Zomi Francombe, Damien Sobol, Jacob Flinkinger, John Chapman, James Henderson, and James Kirby. And we mourn the lives of Israeli soldiers Sivan Weil and Nadav Cohen, who died this week protecting Israel. And we mourn the innocent Palestinian civilians killed, even as we continue to pray for the safe return of the Israeli hostages. We remember that those killed are just a few among the thousands of Israelis and the tens of thousands of Gazans and the hundreds of aid workers who have lost their lives fighting for a better future and working for a better present and innocently standing by. The things are not so ill with you and me as they might have been, wrote George Eliot, is half owing to a number who lived faithfully a hidden life and rest in unvisited tombs. How things turn out does not always make sense. We turn to our Torah with the hope that it will spark in us some understanding. Some might see the callous arrogance of Nadav and Abihu consumed by the sacrificial fire as a warning to Israel for its callousness toward Gazans and to aid workers. And some will see the arrogance of Nadav and Abihu as a cautionary tale for Hamas, whose brutality on October 7th prompted this horrific war. And some will be inclined to use the text to point out the flaws of our political adversaries at home, whichever side of the aisle we sit on. It may be that the most that we can do for the world is to work on ourselves. So we should also remember that our own collective arrogance and callousness threatens us. The arrogant callousness that allows us to live relatively privileged lives in close proximity to those in devastating need. The arrogant callousness that lets us continue consuming vast amounts of energy as the environment screams at us to take care of our one earth. The arrogance of unchecked consumerism without regard for labor conditions and without regard for our own spiritual condition. I don't claim to be any better. If the most we can do for the world is work on ourselves, I hope that this Pesach, I and we can reconnect with that which is at our deepest core and expand from there. We may find that cultivating awe in community can help us wean ourselves away from our own destructive behaviors. And perhaps in that process of working on ourselves and supporting each other in so doing, we will find more that we can do. On every Pesach, the holiday of Matzot, a Jew becomes like a new person. Like the newborn child, each of us was as we came forth from Egypt. The point implanted by God within our hearts is renewed. We each have this inner place, this gift of God. Our task is really to expand that point, to draw all our deeds to follow it. So may it be. Shabbat Shalom.